Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, live show number 266. We are mindful. With us, of course, is Mr. Dean Schmit with Basecamp MetaSearch and MetaSearch Marketing. See, it only took me like, 2 months, right? Melissa Kavanagh with Fuel Travel, and the wonderful Miss Adele Gutman with Aspire Reputation Management. Gee, I feel so good about myself. It's not like I'm play host for 7 years, 6 years, or something, still finally can't get it right. We do want to be mindful of what day this is. Of course, this is September 11th. And for those that are watching us, thank you for taking the time today on such a austere day to go over and pay attention to what we have to say today. Melissa is going to lead that conversation with the latest iteration of what Fuel Travel's consumer sentiment is. But we thought, in respect of the fact that it is today, and it is 19 years after the events and so forth, that we just kind of do a quick recount because we're all slightly old enough, just barely old enough. Adele, I don't know if you were just born or not. I'm not sure. As to where we were this time 19 years ago. Melissa, we'll start with where were you 19 years ago when all this was happening?
I was working at KPMG, which is a giant accounting firm, and I was just 30 miles away from New York City.
That's a little close. Adele, where were you 19 years ago?
When I was on my way to the Library Hotel, which is located on Madison Avenue and 41st Street, I was just crossing 42nd Street on Pershing Square, from Grand Central to Pershing Square. And as a woman was walking past me in the other direction, I heard her on her phone saying, "There's been an explosion at the World Trade Center." And I was really just a 1-minute walk around the corner to get to the hotel. And I said, "There's been an explosion. Let's go to the television." Like, almost everybody followed me up on the elevator so we could turn the television on the rooftop of the Library Hotel. And we were sickened. We had a very surreal, terrified feeling, but as if we were watching a movie, because we've actually seen so many buildings go down. Every single movie seems to have New York City monuments and things go down, that it just didn't feel real and didn't feel possible. And the horror of that day it is just something I'll never forget. And I can tell you that, like many other New Yorkers, I cried every day, maybe for 2 years. It didn't seem like we would ever smile again. But there were some really incredible things. And one of them is the courtesy and kindness and compassion in New York for one person to another was unreal. And it really showed the true character of New York City and how much love we had for the city. And the outpouring of love from the whole world was, we just really felt it. I mean, when we saw the smoke, and I think it was maybe 2 months, we could see that smoke tower hanging in the air. And it touched everyone. And unfortunately, one of my friends, who was a chef that I worked with at the Fitzpatrick Hotel, his name was Benjamin Keith Clark, and he was an ex-Marine. And if you see my Facebook page, you see I changed my profile to share the bit of the story about him. But he, we do believe, was trapped and died because he was trying to help other people. And that was just so typical of him. And of course, the incredible Marine training that he had. And the only thing that I would like to say about this now is that New York is in a tough place now, maybe much tougher in a way, even though the terror and the emotion when I think about 9/11, I can't even keep it out of my voice. It will always be there, and it'll always be the worst day of my life, I'm sure. But what we're going through now is actually worse in a way. It just didn't have the drama and the intensity and it wasn't an attack of hatred. It was something that happens in life. But the damage is much worse than 9/11 ever could have been. And New York needs everyone's support now. And New York is opening.
Tillman, you can sit inside a restaurant.
What's that?
Yeah, you can get inside a restaurant now finally.
You can, yes. Tillman, I forget his last name. Fertitta? Is it Fertitta? He is an author of a great book called Shut Up and Listen, an incredible business book that every hotelier and every restaurateur should read. He owns many restaurants, but I think he owns a team. I'm not a sports person, so I couldn't tell you, but wow, he is a very wise person. And he got on CNBC the other day and he said, the rest of the country is opening up. Governor Cuomo, Mayor de Blasio, you're killing New York. And lo and behold, maybe one day later, they announced a change of attitude. Mm. And they said that starting September 30th, after September 30th, New York City will be allowed to open indoor restaurants again, which is just a pinhole of light, but it may be just enough to help us launch as a city. The museums are open. You can go see the Metropolitan Museum. The Museum of Modern Art isn't even charging admission right now. You can go see the Whitney. You can go see so many things. The Top of the Rock is open. The restaurants in Rockefeller Center are open. I had some incredible dining experience in beautiful garden settings like it's called Inside Park at St. Bart's. It's a magical setting, and of course a beautiful movie set. You've seen it in every New York movie you've ever seen, probably. In Narai, a beautiful Greek restaurant, set up a beautiful garden outside. Casa Lever, an amazing restaurant with a beautiful garden setting. And just going to Central Park alone is a beautiful thing to do. And these museums, they're huge. They have a lot of space. You can be responsible. You can wear your mask. You can wash your hands, and you can be socially distanced doing all these things. So if you have a car and you're within driving distance, please, New York loves you.
I think we can take Adele out of New York. I don't think we can take New York out of Adele. And I think I'm going to just take that little snippet and send it to Cuomo and say, "Hey, guess who's your new spokesman?" Adele, thank you for sharing. Really, truly. I mean, I feel like I just went to a card game and I had not even a pair. And you had a full house when it came to, hey, guess what I did 19 years ago? Dean, where were you 19 years ago when all this happened?
So I was working with a company in Omaha, Nebraska, and like everybody, I can remember the day very clearly. This is 19 years ago, and even then, 19 years ago, it was all over the internet, right? So every computer in every office is all pulled up watching this. Of course, office bandwidth was not meant to accommodate that type of a load 19 years ago, right? So bandwidth was at a premium those days. And like Adele was saying, you didn't think it was real. It was like some movie you were watching on the TV, and it was unbelievable. And it didn't become real to me until I was a smoker at the time. And so I stepped outside with some of my colleagues. And as we're standing outside, we're in Omaha, and we were right in the path of the landing pattern for Offutt Air Force Base. And here comes Air Force One with a fighter jet escort right over our heads. And that's when you knew, oh my gosh, this is real. And one thing that I remember also very clearly about this, and you see this as a statement on Facebook, especially today, but what I really remember too is what we were on September 12th. We were all
Yes.
good people.
Yes, very much so. Hey, Stuart.
Hey, buddy.
Well, Stuart, Stuart, thank you for joining us. Were you in New Guinea 19 years ago, or or where were you 19 years ago?
I had just moved recently to the U.S. For those of you who don't know, I'm originally from England, although the accent's weird, but I'd moved to Myrtle Beach in February of that year. And so it was weird. It was, like a lot of you guys have said, it was definitely surreal and moving. And I think for me personally, it was a massive shift in my mental state, because I'd felt like an outsider for quite some time. You know, I'd been there for 6-7 months, but it was the first time I felt like I was part of the U.S. Like, it really, because everyone came together. You know, you had those shots of Congress on the steps singing together, right? It's an image that we long for to see again, but not for the same reasons. But we'd love to see that kind of coming together. But for me personally, I mean, I think it moved everyone. I think everyone in our office was in tears that day at different times, and it struck different people in different ways. But there was just a sense of numbness, but at the same time, an appreciation for everyone around you and your loved ones. But then at the same time, too, it also made me feel it was, you know, as far away from my family as I've ever felt before, and probably since. So it was odd and different. Definitely nothing I want to go through again. But I think it changed me, as it did a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I just picked up a job running 5 hotels in the Keys literally like a month before, and one of my housekeepers came in that she had heard on the radio while she was cleaning room that a small plane had run into the World Trade Center. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow. And so we were about to have a meeting in the little meeting room that we had. So, well, let's wheel in the TV and plug it in. And we plugged it in and turned it on. And as they're talking with the smoke out of the first tower, we literally watched the second plane hit. And that still, it just puts a chill down my spine now. Yeah, it's like all of a sudden the impact of that wasn't an accident. That wasn't a small plane, you know, and you just realize that this was something that was really happening, and that somebody willfully did this, and just, like I said, still hairs on the arm. That you go back and just say, and we're all dead silent. We're just, all of us, housekeepers, bellman, front desk, you know, me, we're just all staring at the TV and just like, don't want to believe it, but we're watching it. And I agree with you, this surreal. It's like, no. It was a denial thing. Like, this can't really be doing this. This isn't really happening, kind of thing. And then, of course, it descended from there. So, we should all never forget in that sense.
Yeah.
So,
you know,
well, now that I put a damper on it, but I do want to be frank. This is that day. We cannot forget this day. You know, no matter what we do, what we say. But to Adele's point, in many ways, what we're facing as an industry is worse. Because I can say, in contrast, we were never told we couldn't, just nobody would travel at that time for a while. You know, we were never restricted to travel. We faced the fact that we had to inspire travel. There was still an ability to travel. There was a fear of travel, but nobody said can't travel. And now we're being, you know, in that and in reverse, we're fearful of travel, and we're also being told that we shouldn't travel. So we got quite a little bit more on top of the negativity for all this as well. So
I think it's a little different though, Lauren. I think, you know, fear is ultimately the reason, right? Well, in both cases, but I felt like there was a lack of fear. There was a lack of control back then. Like, you felt like you had no control over your safety. You know, if you flew and something happened on that plane, you were completely helpless. I think now what people are realizing is that you are in control of your health right now. Like, the things you choose to do will keep you and your loved ones safe. And it's when you make reckless decisions, that's when you get in trouble. People are traveling, and we'll get into the data in a little while with Melissa, because we just published volume 9 of our study, sentiment study. Majority of people in this country are traveling or have traveled or are planning to travel. People are traveling. The types of travel they're choosing are very, very different. But I think the fear of travel is at an all-time low since March 15th, when this really started rearing its head. So I think there's some light at the end of the tunnel here for a lot, especially if you're in a leisure destination, or if you can pivot to create demand. Like what Adele was saying there about New York. I mean, think of the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that have always dreamed of a trip to New York and just haven't ever been able to afford to do it, right? But now would be a perfect time to do it. All those museums are open. Central Park, you can go walk hand in hand with your loved one through Central Park. There's so many restaurants that are doing some great things. The hotels are in desperate need and doing great things to welcome people. Now is probably the best chance you'll ever have in your life to travel to New York. Yeah, you can't go to a Broadway show, and there's certain attractions that are closed, but the important things, the things that you'll create great memories, they're all still available, and you can travel to these cities if you do it responsibly, if you don't do anything stupid. So.
True, very true. No, it's just true.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we're dealing with something that we didn't have to deal with back then, was misinformation and polarity of opinions and politicizing things. We had a bit of a solidarity back then that an innocence to the shock of it being the first time that happened to our culture. And then that solidarity that Adele, you mentioned too. I mean, even down in the Keys, there was the solidarity. We was, very proud of the fact that everyone rallied together and so forth. Even if we weren't even a part of what was being rallied for, we really felt in solidarity that we could support emotionally or physically, financially, whatever it was that was going on, because we didn't know what was next. We didn't know if that was the first step of many. I mean, I remember the uncertainty. We had Florida. For us, we had to face the anthrax issue immediately thereafter. And then that created like, oh my God, is the world falling apart? Here's all this happening now. Now we have somebody throwing around this powder stuff. Who's next? I remember we wouldn't even open our mail for just strange stuff. But anyways, I don't want to be forgetful of the day for that, but also I want to be respectful of the fact that Melissa and Stuart and their team put together once again an excellent consumer sentiment report ongoing as we go through our own crisis now. And then gives us hopefully some insights as to how we can look at what may or may not be changing. So Melissa, please, not to give you a downer cover trends, everybody. Hey, Melissa, what's going on?
Great intro.
Yeah.
Oh,
bring us back up, Melissa. Bring us back up.
Yeah, come on, Melissa.
All right, so I'm going to go through this data, but you are not, and nobody on this show is allowed to ask me if we have previous data before the pandemic started, because the answer is no. Do not ask me that question. We do not have a comparison.
Like Tim and Ed aren't here. You should be okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
can we post the link and tell people where to get it if they want to follow along?
Yes, you can go to fueltravel/blog and click on the consumer sentiment study. And I think, is it in the notes? Hang on. Should put it in there. Yeah.
I dropped it in.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
The biggest thing to take away from this round of the survey is that according to our respondents, 50%, 50, have traveled since the pandemic started. When we asked this question a month ago, it was only 34%. We're up to 50%. And this went out before Labor Day. So I can't imagine, now that we're after Labor Day, what that number is going to be.
I mean, it's certainly going to be north of 60% at this point, I believe. And keep in mind that the constituents, the people that are answering this, are self-identified as travelers, right? They typically will travel at least once a year. So I don't think it's 50% of the entire population by any stretch, but it's 50% of people that would typically travel have traveled. And a lot of them have traveled more than once. That's what we're seeing. We're seeing shorter trips, closer in, more frequently. We're seeing in markets where, typically where there's a massive drop-off after Labor Day weekend, they're looking pretty rosy for the next 2 or 3 weekends. The summer could be extended here for a lot of people. I've got clients in certain areas that are demanding a higher ADR this September than they were last September and getting higher occupancy. So I think for the leisure consumer, they're traveling if you incentivize them to travel.
And we did look at some of these questions based on age, because we haven't done that in several rounds of the survey. Gen X and younger we were at almost 60% have traveled.
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, it makes sense. I know I've traveled a couple of times. Melissa, you traveled at least once to see family. You're planning another trip. Adele, you've traveled via having to move. I don't know about Lauren. You were meant to travel last week, right? But didn't get to, or you did?
2 weeks ago for a 4 day, just up the road, drive market travel.
Okay. And then Dean, have you traveled since March?
Went last weekend for our anniversary, actually. Yes.
There you go. 100% of people on this, and I bet if you polled the audience, more than 50% would have. People are traveling. It's just different types of travel, and that's why you as a marketer have to really understand the psychology of this, the behavior of this, and change your tactics to target people that are willing to travel right now. And really, the good news about it is there's not any major outbreaks really tagged to travel, safe, responsible travel. Yeah, you get the odd, too many people in the Ozarks or whatever, right? But look at like Disney. Disney's been open now for quite some time, and the media's been like, come on, Disney, give me an outbreak. We want to write about that. And not one story has really been written about it being a vector. So if you travel responsibly, if you socially distance, if you wear a mask, if everyone around you is doing the same thing, the risk is very minimum. Travel is safe. And I said it again, places don't spread COVID, people do. And if you take responsibility for yourself and you encourage other people to do the same, it's safe. It's as safe to travel as it is to go to your grocery store or to a restaurant in your hometown. There's no difference.
Well, and there's definitely some pent-up demand for it, too. I know that we've talked before about some of the early travelers were the risk takers, the ones that just said, I don't care about it. I think we're now also getting to a stretch of the pent-up demand. And everybody on this show right now, actually, we're all people who historically have traveled. Mm-hmm. I will tell you that me personally, the fact that I, up until last weekend, had not traveled someplace for the better part of 6 months was driving me insane. Mm-hmm. I was getting to the point where I had a little twitch going on and I had to go somewhere. And I know there's more people like that, right? We are people who travel. And I think that contributes a little bit to what you're seeing in your survey. 50% of people have. I think after Labor Day, you'll see even more. I think we will continue to see a little bit of that come out, especially, knock on wood, we get a vaccine for this thing, that there will be some early pent-up demand that comes out as a result of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just got to be careful not to get carried away and let our guard down, right? This is something that is manageable if people behave appropriately. So we as hoteliers need to keep encouraging appropriate behavior. We as travelers need to continue to behave appropriately. And we'll get through the fall and into the spring, and hopefully we'll be on the verge of some kind of vaccine. But travel is happening. I mean, as much as people are in poverty right now, there's a lot of people that are traveling. And so I had a conversation with someone last week about the fact that there are a lot of people in terrible situations, right, where they've lost their job, they've lost their income, they're financially struggling. But there's also a band of people that have maintained their job, have reduced their expenses because they're not going out to eat, they're not going out and doing things that usually cost money on a month-to-month basis, that have a little bit more of a disposable income. And you're seeing this pattern in travel where people, Melissa's a prime example of this. She's not someone that would ever splurge on a trip. She'd always cut corners and scrimp and save, but she's actually going on a nicer trip than she would typically do in the fall because she's been in her house locked up and she deserves it. And there's a lot of people in that situation.
But this has been all leisure travel, and looking at Dell's comments in the chat area there, leisure has done relatively well. It's all relative, right? Corporate, however, not so much, right? So even myself, I traveled on leisure. I haven't been on a business trip since January. Yeah, February actually.
I'd like to throw in a little bit about the corporate travel before Melissa moves on to the next point. Is that what we're finding now is, as people realize there is really not a liability as to what they're doing to keep people safe. Like, you can't say you got COVID because you stayed with me. I think some corporate offices are beginning to rethink their concern of the legalities of asking their team members to travel for business. I know that was a consideration early on with some companies when from salespeople that were reaching out to them saying, look, our company really doesn't want us to travel because they don't want to put us in jeopardy, which translated to me of they don't really want to put it where you can come back and say, hey, I got COVID because you made me travel. I think now that the legality pressure is maybe lesser or not as defined, I don't know what a better way to say it, that corporate might say, okay, Lauren, get your butt out. Time to hit the street. We got to start hitting some people. Be safe. Do all the good stuff. But, it's a part of your job description that you have X, Y, Z to do. And it's going to require you to go around and get in front of people if they're willing to do so. So I think there might be some impact to that. How much or whatever, I'm just saying that this is just probably a one piece to the puzzle of all of it. But I think there is a lesser concern as to the liability aspect of this.
Yeah, I think you're right, Aaron. I think, we were so scared because there was so little we knew about how this thing was spreading early on. And so I think there was zero chance that businesses were going to take on that liability. But now, if you look at what's happened over the last couple of months, and it's really interesting because people keep getting mad that the science is changing, right? But that's what science does, right? Science looks at empirical data and makes new hypotheses until that's proven wrong. Like the fact that the facts are changing is because science is working. Whether masks worked or not early and now they say they do is because more data has accumulated. And I think the same has happened with how this virus spreads. And there's very little evidence that it spreads prevalently from indirect contact. It's almost all of the tracing has gone through water vapor, through breathing, into the eyes, into the mouth, into the nasal cavity. So I think if you do take the appropriate precautions, traveling, doing any activity is safe. And you can see that in areas where the numbers are continuing to go down, even though there's a lot of people there, they're going about their business, but they're doing it responsibly. So I think, looking at it from a corporate standpoint, running a business, having employees that we'd send out, I would probably not force anyone to travel, but I would certainly at this point say, hey, if we feel like we can close this deal or that there's an opportunity here, if you would like to travel, we're going to lift the ban. We'll probably have you sign a little waiver saying that you're doing it on your own risk. But I don't feel like I did 3 months ago where I was like, there's no way I'm letting anyone travel this year. Now I'm loosening up. No, it's not. We're not going to be back to last year's levels anytime soon. But not just because of, the risk, but also there's not an appetite for it on the reciprocal side. Right? Clients don't necessarily want us coming to their office. But I do feel a little more optimistic about business travel than I did even a month ago. I think it's going to start to slowly come back this fall.
Adele, thank you for dropping that in, and I do want to get back to that at some point. I think it's an interesting chart to discuss. I don't want to fall off track with Melissa, though, and the information, but I think it has a relevancy, too, that we can come back to and point at it, because I'd like to have a little bit more clarity as to the chart itself, as to what it's doing for it. But we always have the painful part of interrupting Melissa all the time. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do it this time.
Well, there's only 5 of us here today. Yeah.
So we did ask of the people who traveled, what type of trip was it? And not surprisingly, 50% said that it was a planned vacation, but over 30% said it was a last-minute trip. And I think that's really important. And to Stuart's point, I think that, again, looking at the drive market, which is still super, super hot, you can convince people, hey, it's sunny, it's beautiful, get out of your house, here's a great deal, and people will come. Some.
Yeah, and here's the thing, if you can get them to do it once, you can probably more likely get them to do it again, and you can get them to tell their friends about it. Like right now, it's about encouraging those first few travelers to come to you so you can tell a story and create a narrative about how safe it is and what a great experience they had. You're starting from zero, but you've got to start somewhere. Maybe offer some good incentives for people to get to where you are now, and then build on that. Use that as leverage to get the next guy and the next guy.
And business was not dead. And knowing, again, the fact that this is truly a leisure travel database, we did get, about 8% that said that they did travel on business. I was actually surprised it was that high for this survey of people.
Mm-hmm.
So we also asked, where did you stay? Overwhelmingly, the people chose a standard hotel, motel, resort. None of the other options, family, friends, professionally managed vacation rental, Airbnb, timeshare, everything else was way beneath that.
That was fantastic news.
It is great news. I was a
Very
little surprised by that, though, actually. I kind of thought that vacation rentals Airbnb would have been higher.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they would have you believe. You know, I think there's a false narrative we talked about last week on the show that is skewed because there's a percentage they look better on sites like Expedia because of the destinations that are recovering fast, like Panama City Beach, like Daytona Beach, like Myrtle Beach. These areas have heavy density of that kind of inventory. So if you look at Expedia as a homogenous thing, they're going to say, well, the percentage of vacation rentals are recovering. All of their business is leisure transient, right? And that's what's recovered. So hotels, they're doing just fine, but other people will try to spin it to say vacation rentals are safer, Airbnbs are safer. We as an industry need to reject that false narrative and say, no, we're professionally cleaned, we're professionally managed, we're doing the precautionary things, you're perfectly safe here. And in fact, the majority of people are choosing to stay in hotels, not these other places.
I don't know if Melissa, do you know Holly? I'm sorry, I don't want to always assume things.
No,
Holly,
Everybody knows Holly.
I've not met Melissa.
Yes, I think Adele, you already know Holly, so I'm not thinking that's a surprise, and all the rest of us know Holly.
As I was coming on the show, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to not, because there are 2 people out of 5 that I owe something to today, like a week ago. I should really get off and go and do my work, but
always a pleasure to have you, Holly. That's never a problem. Homework's later. Anyway, so Melissa, sorry, please.
We asked again, this is the second time we asked about communication about pre-arrival things. Did you get all the information that was important to you? And it was consistent with our last study that more than 70% of respondents said that they got all the good cleaning information about the property. But in terms of local things going on, what's open, what's not open, hotels doing a crappy job still.
You've been saying this for months, Lauren, and I don't know why hotels are not catching on to this. They should be putting it out every day, all day, positive messages about their whole area, because people aren't just coming to sleep and take a shower. They're coming to experience a beautiful life, and they need to know what they can and cannot do.
Especially on a leisure trip, right?
Right. You're not going there to stay in a hotel room. You're going there because the hotel room is where you want to stay.
I think it's a little bit tricky though, because businesses are opening and closing, and so it's not a full-time job, it's a part-time job keeping up with what is available. So I do think that plays into it. They might put something out, oh, go to this place, and then they decide they have to close.
Yeah.
It's a worthwhile effort, though.
Yeah, it is. I think is the juice worth the squeeze? Probably in this case it is. And you don't have to be comprehensive about your area. You know, pick a handful of partners that you have a good relationship with that you want to help buoy up, and then I think you're okay. It does.
And make sure that they let you know if they're changing their hours and beyond.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what you're close to, right? You know why people are coming to your hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
at least from a general standpoint, if you can sit inside a restaurant and that has changed, or if there's occupancy of, maybe restaurants are allowing 50% occupancy inside, but you can sit out, like all that, at least the top level stuff has got to be available. Has to be. There's no excuse not to at least have that. That's what I have to say about that. Myself.
I volunteer with this group called kickcovid.us, and they actually, Stuart, you filled out the template. It's a website that does nothing but give safety information about businesses. Are they open? Are they enforcing mask wearing? Are they taking temperatures? Do you feel safe, basically? So that's another good tool to be able to see in the area what's going on. It's not an app, it's a website. It's an app coming soon.
So we also asked again if the properties met expectations amongst all the safety and cleanliness items. I think still most people are really very happy with everything, but the availability of amenities is still the highest item that did not meet expectations. So we're at 17% of people saying that that was not meeting their expectations, and that's up from the last survey, which was at 12%.
Well, it's not a surprise there because it's very challenging if you don't have full occupancy. I mean, if you're struggling just to keep your doors open, it's hard to keep all the services going when you don't have enough people to use those services to make it pay. It's very, very challenging.
Well, there's also a staffing issue. This is one of the most ironic challenges we're facing in this pandemic, right? Because there's such a lull in demand, but then there's spikes in demand. And a lot of destinations, they're dead during the week and then spike on the weekends. And it's really hard to turn over the rooms. Like a lot of places are selectively limiting inventory on weekends because they can't manage it. They can't find the people to clean the rooms. And it's a tragedy because they're leaving money on the table. I mean, we literally have one group of 10 properties in a destination that literally chartered a flight to Jamaica and flew back about 200 Jamaican employees that had previously worked in their call center, and they flew them to the US to work for the summer in housekeeping because it was the only way they could operate. And it's a really creative solution that, probably cost them a couple of $100,000, but if you average that out to $1,000 per employee to guarantee you've got them for the summer, it was a genius move, and it allowed them in their market to stay 100% occupied, where a lot of people were having to throttle their inventory, which was crazy.
Wow. Melissa, sorry, what was the percent?
What was the percent?
What was the percent on the amenity? What was it last week?
12%.
Wow, so it's getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lauren, I think your audio is off.
So there's a buzz somewhere, and I don't know who it has. So I muted mine.
Holly joined. Just saying.
Just saying, yeah,
Come on, mute it.
So I say this is a lesson learned from resort management, and it truly is. A lot of hotels are faced with how they maintain their amenity levels. They never had to worry about this before. They had, as you said, the occupancy, the constant flow, so they kept things open and available during downtimes because they were brief, short, and it wasn't really an impact per se. Now they're faced with large time frames and or total nobodies that for 3 or 4 days, how do you keep a restaurant open on your property or something? And some of them are making the very bad choice of just shutting it down during those times, which is automatically mandating that you're not going to get demand for those times once people find out that availability is not there when they choose to stay with you. So resorts had to always go through the process of come hell or high water, I got to keep the spa open. I got to keep the golf course running. I got to keep these things going, even if I don't actually have tea times or spa things scheduled. And there's ways to structure how you bring in teams and staff dependent upon this, including when it goes to just the hotels that are facing some of the more basics. Like, how do you do? We used to call it ODL, option to leave early. When I used to run restaurants, I would have to, and this is just basic, restaurant running. When you used to be a standalone restaurant, you'd have to buy as if you're going to be busy, staff as if you're going to be full, and cut like a mother when you didn't have the business you expected, and you learned how to reconstitute your products when you didn't have the ability to sell it and you had shelf life. That's just the nature of those types of businesses that hotels have never really truly learned. When I first went into food and beverage and hotels, which got me into hotels, I was thinking they were just a bunch of pampered brats. They have 700 people sitting above them, and they're whining about, oh, we didn't get many people for breakfast. It's like, slap some bacon in the air conditioners. Let's get these people hungry, and staffing in certain levels. And when something broke, I still remember this day, I went and grabbed the plunger, and they're like, what are you doing? I says, well, the toilet's clogged. He says, well, engineering take care of it. I'm like, well, bonus, but I'm so used to running at the time. I was so used to running my own restaurant. I was like, hey, toilet's dirty, plugged up. Guess who's fixing it? So it's this mindset that the restaurants and hotels have to get down to the basic. What is it taking to keep me alive here? What do I got to do? keep those things available. So anyway, that's my little tribe today. Melissa.
We asked a new question, but it's a rehashed question. So we asked, the next time you travel.
I got echo going on now. Do you guys?
I'm hearing a very large echo.
Okay, it stopped.
The next time you travel, what would you like to hear from the property prior to your stay? So these were the same items that we asked of people who already traveled, and did they hear? So this is asking, what do you want to hear from properties before you travel? And very much local mask requirements, again, updated cleaning protocols. But you know what's number 3 is open status of local restaurants, almost 70%. So 70% want to hear about the local activities, but only 35% said that they received that information. What a huge disconnect.
And an opportunity.
Do better.
Mm-hmm.
And for the younger groups, the status of open restaurants and local mask requirements were equal at the top. They tied at 70% each. Just as important.
But I thought it was interesting that you said that the people who wouldn't go because of masks were the younger people.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's what they want to know, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is there a mask requirement?
Audience you want to attract.
Yeah, I'm so using that stat because that's been my mantra for my hotels for so long. Is like, get that info out, and for the hotels that we've been doing it with, there's been success. And for the hotels that are still like, oh, I haven't called them yet or whatever. Okay, here's a stat: 70% of the people want this stuff, and only 30% are getting it. Where do you want to be? Thank you for that stat. I'm going to use that one.
It's free for you to use. So speaking of, oh, go ahead.
Can I just clarify? Sorry. So you're saying younger people want to know if the mask is required because they won't go there if the mask is required.
I'm about to get to that stat. So this is, I think, now the 3rd survey that we've asked about the mask ordinances and how, if there is a mask ordinance, it would affect people's decisions to travel. And this is the 3rd survey that it has completely wonked up the pie chart again. Each round has been completely different. So this time we have almost equal parts of my decision wouldn't be changed versus I would be less likely to travel versus I'd be more likely to travel there if there is a mask ordinance. So compared to last time, those who would be more likely to travel there was the same. It stayed at 35%. But those who said their decision would be unchanged went down drastically. We had been sitting at almost 50%. And so therefore, those who are saying they are less likely to travel has now increased, is now at 30%.
Yeah, it's weird. It swung one way and then the other, because if the very first one we did, it was, I think, 28% and 28% were the more likely and less likely, right? They were evenly split, and then the 40-something% was unchanged. And then it swung to where everyone was like, oh, okay, I'm probably being a dumbass. I need to wear a mask. And that number of people that would not travel shrunk dramatically. And why on earth it's grown again, I have no earthly idea. It is baffling to me.
So to understand the question I was asked, whether there was local ordinance or just if the hotel was asking you to wear to make you wear the mask. Ordinance. Okay.
The question's been asked the same way all 3 times, but it's weird. I mean, the psychology of someone that was like, nope, I'm not going if there's a mask ordinance, to okay, I will go now, to now going back. Even more people now saying nope again. So I don't know what's instigated that, other than the politicization of it and the nonsense that's going on in the media.
I think there's some social acceptance to it too, right? So there's still people that don't want to wear a mask, and I get that, and that's okay. But now you can't hardly go to a business. You can't go to a department store, a retail store, a restaurant without having to wear a mask.
Right.
It's just kind of become the standard. Okay, this is how it's going to be. Deal with it.
And most rational, normal people can deal with that, right? But for
Come to
some reason,
Arizona.
that number of irrational people has grown again, and I don't know what's creating that other than
I think it's 6 months of being cooped up in their houses and they're just over
not
it.
wanting to be told what to do. Probably.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Come to Arizona. You'll find some of those non-mask wearers.
Well, I live in South Carolina, so
hey, for the first time, I got flagged for having the wrong mask. I went to my doctor's office, and I had one of those early on. I had the mask that had the vents on it, and the doctor's office asked me to change to the mask that they provided me because the mask doesn't protect others. And I appreciate it. I was like, sorry. I mean, this was my mask that was, strapped so it doesn't fall off your nose. I keep seeing people all the time. It's like, dude, pull your pants up.
And airlines are also saying you can't wear that mask. That mask doesn't.
Yeah. Delta was the first. Oh no, United was the first to say you can't have vented masks on it and stuff. And I think it's a great thing because you're right. The mask is supposed to be prevented both ways. I didn't realize when I bought it that these vents really didn't have filters on them. I'm sucking in filtered air, but I'm blowing out whatever I'm breathing, and it doesn't really help other people as much as if I had a non-vented mask. I think, Stuart, I think your brilliant idea of taking a Darth Vader helmet and putting a filter in it is perfect. I'm just thinking that way it covers the eyes, and you get to sound really cool, and you look cool, and you got a filter on.
if I was in my office right now, I'd put it on because it's sitting there in my office.
Anyway, I'm sorry, Melissa. Please go ahead. I digress.
We're going to stick on this for just a minute because looking at the age comparisons, I kind of want to throw up a little bit. So 43% of the people in the younger age groups would be less likely, 43%, to travel with a mask ordinance in place versus 23% of those of the older group.
It surprises me. It really does.
I think Richard was commenting in the chat box a little bit on your age page about the travel component, not necessarily this one in particular, but I think he was referring to the 25 and under versus the 55 and 74, whether that's a representation of leisure travel, Airbnb, whatever. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, our database does tend to skew older. That said, the distribution of the demographics, even though this is a smaller sample size than we've seen, has been pretty consistent across all 9 surveys. So we're sticking with it until we can't survey anymore. All right, let's see what's up next. Which of the following would most likely persuade you to book a future vacation? This is this question we've asked on every survey. And the good news is we are back down in percentage points in terms of people who saying they could not be persuaded. We are now back down to 16%, and that is basically tied with the lowest we had seen it back in June. So
that's a great stat. 84% of people would be open to traveling right now. That's a massive stat right there.
And flexibility just continues to, it's been on top, it's still on top, followed by discounts and then the reassurance about what the property is doing from a sanitization standpoint. Oh, let's see. Top 3 reasons. Oh, this is a good one. I love this one. The top 3 reasons that would prevent you from staying at a hotel right now. Fear of other guests, still number 1. But nothing preventing me is at over 30% and is now in the 2nd position. Nothing is preventing me from traveling right now. Which is great.
Progress.
It is progress. And then we also have a category that says I have already traveled. So that's at 27%. So sort of if you combine those two, we're looking pretty good. Looking at the age comparison, nothing is preventing me was the top choice for youngins, and they were at 36%. And budget concerns was number 2. So basically, their quote unquote safety concerns are not anywhere near the top of what is preventing them from traveling, if anything is preventing them. They're ready to go. Oh, let's see. What other good nuggets do we have? How likely are you to book a trip in the next 30, 60, 90 days? This has been an ongoing question. We are now at 55% of people saying that they would maybe or more likely to travel in the next 30 days. 62% would be willing to travel in the next 60 days and 68% in the next 90 days. We've gone up 10 percentage points since the last survey of people willing to travel in the next 30 days.
It's nice to have some good news.
Yes. And so that's just 2 percentage points lower than the high that we had seen back in June. So it is very, very good news. Still asking about distance from home. How willing are you to travel? 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, etc. Outstanding. If you are 1 hour from anything, 68% of people are willing to travel within the next 30 days within 1 hour from their house.
Wow.
Yeah. 54% for 2 hours and 39% for 3 hours. And all three of these categories have had huge increases compared to the last survey. More than 10 percentage points on all of them increase versus the last survey. So times are changing again.
Yeah, on CNN, Dr. Fauci said to please not be complacent, and because there's going to be a spike very likely. But then CNN went on to say, you know, you are of the people who have gotten sick or hospitalized, 2/3 of them or something like that went to a restaurant. But I felt like they were just kind of manipulating the things. I mean, people who are out there living their life may have gone to a restaurant. That doesn't necessarily mean that they got it from a restaurant or anything. So it is great news, but always with that caution. You know, let's not get crazy. Let's not expect that this is a light switch. This is going to be a slow climb.
Let's not get crazy and wear the freaking mask.
Wear the freaking mask.
Right.
I ate inside a restaurant 2 weeks ago for the first time in 6 months. It was the most amazing.
How was that?
There's this crazy concept where you sit down and people bring food to you and then they clean it up. And it was incredible. It was so good.
I guess I'm being pragmatic, you know, with us rolling through Labor Day that we just did. I think that, you know, 2 weeks from now, we're going to have the inevitable, which is it's going to spread because of the fact that it increases the spread. And I think everybody's beginning to understand that there's an ebb and flow to this, and keep doing what they shouldn't be doing and not protecting each other and being civil about this, the more we're going to see the impact on the negativity. And the more the media is going to amp that up. As Stuart, as you said, they're all about watching the parks as to, oh, you're going to get this thing going on. If you do it responsibly, you're not going to. And that's the message that keeps getting missed is, you know, we can't keep our economy shut down. Yeah, there's a bit of truth to that. Obviously, there's people going out. They can't just sit in the room with no monies and not having food come in and whatever. Mm-hmm. There's a reality to all of this. But responsible civil participation, masks, distancing, washing hands, you know, the over and over of this, restaurants can run and operate. Even for that matter, we're opening up bars down here, which I think is going to be really interesting because interesting in Florida. The bar's opening up. They can have 50% occupancy. You can sit, but you can't walk around and talk to anybody. Can't socialize. Can't dance. Can only go to the restroom and go back to your seat. It's like, why are you going to a bar?
You know, something interesting happened in our local area, and some of it was local, some of it was at the state level. So, you know, Myrtle Beach, as you know, was one of the first areas to really explode with tourism. Right before Memorial Day, we opened back up and had this tidal wave and got a ton of bad press about it. And there was reckless behavior and numbers kind of went up. And then a couple of weeks after that, the governor of South Carolina put in a new ordinance that said bars couldn't be open after a certain time. I forget what time it was. I think 11 o'clock maybe is what they said. They shut down bars. And we've maintained steady occupancy. I mean, it's off for the summer, right? Especially midweek has been around 50% occupancy throughout the summer. But weekends, we've been 95, 100% occupied most weekends through the summer. It's been spectacular. And the whole time, and numbers of COVID have been going down for our county every single week.
Right.
There's been a couple of little blips, but we've been packed. And I get the data is skewed, right? Because the data would show the people when they go home getting COVID. And there was a little bit of that. But the local people, the workers that are interacting with these people, the restaurants have all been open for inside seating and outside seating. Our cases are way down. You can live if you do it responsibly. You can manage this disease if you do it responsibly. You can travel if you do it responsibly.
And that's where I think, so I'll be really curious to see what happens after this Labor Day, because I do think versus Memorial Day weekend, I do think people are smarter. 3 months later it took us, but I bet we're not going to see quite the spike that we saw after Memorial Day, because I do think outside of Arizona and maybe a couple of places, that they have to, and I shouldn't give Arizona such a hard time. We are wearing a lot more masks than we used to, but literally I was at the dog park the other day. I was the only one wearing a mask out of 40 people that were there. We were outside, but people were not social distancing. But I wonder if that spike is going to be there. The downside is, though, I don't know what happens with the onset of normal flu season. Is that going to be dramatically different, lower, because we're practicing?
I think you're right.
Stuff?
We see a different type of traveler this holiday versus Memorial weekend. Memorial was younger folks, more reckless folks, more looking for a party. They were just blowing that extra money they were getting from the stimulus. It was a lot of recklessness in Memorial Day. We had some problems, fights in the streets, stupid stuff that happens when it's that kind of crowd. This was all families traveling. And from my observation, even though we were packed, the vast majority of people were being smart about their travel. So I think you're right, Holly. I think we won't see the spike we saw after Memorial Day, at least in the destinations that have been open for a while. There might be some where it's the first time they've had a crowd and there's a learning curve, but I'm hoping nationally we don't see the spike we saw. And it'll be good.
The fact that society-wise, we don't have a truth authority on what is correct and incorrect. We have a lot of ambiguity on this between.
Wait, what? I thought that was us.
Right? So there is no clarity to this. We have certain authorities that we trust more than others, but even then we don't know whether they're the politicized, leveraged. I mean, Fauci's great, but in all honesty, he even defended the president recently because why? Because if he doesn't, he's not going to have a voice.
Hey. No picking on Fauci.
No, I like Fauci. I love the fact he does it and does what he has, but the FDA, the CDC, they all have these because for me, it's like even as simple as things like I go to the doctor's office, they're great about telling me I have to change my mask. And as I walk out to the front to ask about another question, the very doctor I just looked at is walking from one of the other treatment rooms, pulling his mask down, talking to people that are in his office. I'm like, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Is it,
Bad.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at it going,
Yes.
But by the same token, it's like, I don't know if all the people in the offices are routinely checked for COVID and that they don't think that they're exposed to patients that are wearing masks, that they're wearing masks, that they're worrying about it. So when they're in their office environment behind plexiglass, it's an okay. I don't know. But all I know is that to me, it's like taking a mask off when you're with other people. Not good. Bad, good. So we have all this ambiguity to this stuff that creates this polarity of how all of us talk to each other. I went to Publix the other day to buy groceries, and they're very good about making people wear masks. But I can assure you that as we see in the news feeds all the time with social media, some of the rants and raves and screams is going to run through the store without a mask on, coughing, hacking, sneezing, grabbing food, and checking out. And the Publix people aren't going to be able to do much about it if they really, without calling the police and making a big thing about it. So it's a tough thing. It's again, it goes back to, should we just have the federal government say, everybody wear a mask? I know it's going to be hard to enforce and all this other stuff that the police say, but at least it gives them a reason to point to them and say, put your mask on.
That approach seems to have worked for multiple other countries. I don't know. There is some data that suggests it's a good idea. Like
that. Yeah. So, Melissa, I'm sorry. Again, I tried to drag you down a rabbit hole.
That's okay.
Please.
I've only got one more question to talk about. And that is looking at the types of destinations people are willing to travel. And this, for the second time in a row, if that's a thing, small town outperforming everything else. 42% of people said that they would be willing to travel to a small town within 1 month versus 32% somewhere in nature and 33% for a beach destination.
Wow.
Mm.
I'm curious, did they define what they interpret as being a small town? How
No.
far do you have to be to qualify?
It's
All
up
right,
to
what's
their
that mean?
interpretation.
I grew up in a town of 800 people, so
That's not really a town. That's like a school.
But I will say this, so even the major, so all the different types of destinations did have increases in that 1 month range. It's not great, but even major cities had an increase from 12% up to 16%. It's progress. At least it's
It is
something.
progress.
It's not great numbers, but at least it's going in the right direction.
You know,
But I want to know why small towns. Safer perception, you think?
yeah. Well, like I live in Norfolk, Nebraska, and I tell you what, we don't have, I mean, we have to go into some stores, there's mask mandates, but we don't have a citywide mask mandate. That's not because of everybody worried about their freedoms and that stuff. It's because we don't have to. It's just, I mean, Pierce County here north of me, the entire county has like 50 cases of COVID. It's not a thing. Whereas if I go to Omaha, Nebraska, actually go into the city, then it's a different story. Now you've got mask mandates everywhere. So it's just, you have greater freedoms by going to a smaller town.
I want to bring into Adele's conversation about this, about New York City and so forth from earlier in the show a little bit. You know, I think from a marketing perspective, we keep talking about what we've lost and what we can't do and what we haven't been able to do and the challenges of what we're facing now with perceptions and everything else. We're also not talking about the things we can do and the new ways that people are reaching us and dialoguing with us and able to deal with us directly. We have all these new channels of communication that didn't exist 19 years ago, flat out. Did not have social media back then. Flat out had very little percentage-wise people using the internet the way they're using it now. And now we have these channels of opportunity to communicate and answer questions to our guests. And I would think from a city's perspective, everything that Dean and Melissa pointing out by the survey is true. I mean, we had the same density issue. We didn't want to be around a lot of people. But that didn't keep us from a city density. We went to Treasure Island, which is connected to all these little other municipalities, which is a part of a big municipality, which is part of a very dense populated county in Florida. We saw that we chose not to engage with all those people, but it didn't mean we didn't want to go to where we were going. The city issue is a little different because being in the city inherently, you're going to be facing people to do whatever you do in the city. If there's a way to communicate, there's, for the hotel's perspective, in the city to talk about their control of their elevator to ensure that people aren't densified into the elevator, which might be a concern for some. The use of staggering room reservation, so you're not right next to a room that you're going to run into somebody in the hallway as easily. I don't know if, and I'm not saying these are definable things to do. I'm just thinking that these are things that people consider when they're making choices of where they're staying. That safety issue, that density issue, the traffic issue, the restaurant availability issue. These are all things that we need to communicate very good if we're going to get people to stay at the hotel, because the restaurants are now open enough in New York that you can still get the most amazing pizza in the universe. You can still go over and get some amazing, food. There's so many places to eat in New York.
I'm kind of hungry now, actually. I don't know why.
And yes, there's no Broadway, but there's MoMA. There's so many things you can do, even if it's just outside walking in Battery Park. Okay, it's a beautiful. It is a place like no other, and that's almost like an inspiration of how do you get people to do that. And you're right, the drive market is the market first because there's still this apprehension of adding the extra layer of travel on airplanes, but there should be a way to bring people in by making sure that we can communicate in channels that we now have available in ways that we've never used it as effectively as we had before. I think there's a possibility of that. That's just me optimistically thinking, yay, we can save the world.
Well, there has been some evidence, and to me, this is the most exciting change that I've seen, but there's been some upticks of group business bookings year over year growing. Over the last 3 weeks, there's been positive changes each week, and that's people having meetings. So to me, that's pretty exciting. like that's a real indicator that maybe we're making a turn for some return to good business. I don't know. We'll see.
Were they the meetings like, let's get together because we've all been separated and working from home, or were they just a energizing meetings that they always used to have?
It's just group bookings across the board. I get this update. I don't know if you guys get this. It's from a hotel company. It is incredible, this comprehensive update. I'll send you guys the link to it, but it's just showing group bookings week, it's comparing week over week changes. And this is the first time I've seen 3 weeks in a row where there's an uptick in group.
Melissa, I think I shared with you, I know it would do with Stuart, the information that Amadeus shared on the British Columbia HSMI chapter quarantine we did last night. Which was kind of fun. It didn't show an uptick in group, but it showed group was still there. It's still hanging in there, and that's Canada, where they have the ability to travel and do some things that we're not allowed to do it in our markets right now. But Ellis is sharing some information on this. He had those questions as to, alternative usage of the facilities and demand in that sense. I know that I've been trying to talk to one of my clients in a certain market about offering the education bubble program. Basically, you have meeting spaces and stuff. You have food facilities. You can service food, and you can maybe create an environment where a small bubble of kids can train, so that if COVID does break out in the bubble, it's a smaller group that gets quarantined compared to the whole class in that sense. But and I don't know of any place that's really taken and embraced that. I don't know of any market that's done that. I do know that the hotel for business is definitely something. There are people that just in the market want to go to sit in a different room and do work. As long as you have good Wi-Fi, a desk, and a decent view, they're happy to get the room for a day or two or few. So
I saw several articles about schoolcations and educations where you come with your kids and they go into a classroom, and the people that were the nannies in the play group or the kids club are now minding them at the computer and helping them with whatever they need, and they get snack breaks and characters come out and all of these things to entertain the kids. But I saw one, and it was not one of the fancy resort ones. It was just one like at a Sheraton in Arizona, I think. And it was $400 a day just to drop off your kid for the day. I mean,
Wow.
wow. Did I misunderstand?
Were people doing it though?
But they get a lot of stuff. They get snacks.
I understand that parents want to get rid of their kids for a long while.
I want to get rid of my kids, but not for $400. Holy cow.
So it makes me wonder, is this one of those, when hotels come up with packages, half of it is because we want somebody to book the packages, but the other half is that we just want PR about the package to come through our hotel, so people will just come and book the regular,
Yeah.
Are you sure that was a daily rate? Because I know what you're talking about. I've seen that they're doing. Are you sure that was a daily $400, not a weekly?
Oh, I mean that's what I'll try to look for the article, but I thought I was shocked. I
love. Stuart, you saying your kids aren't worth $400? I mean, is that what you're saying? $400 or what?
Your state of mind.
I mean, if it was a permanent, I would sell them to you for $400.
Well, and Del, I know that we never went back to your chart to that. You said you might. Are you off the call, Del? Do you want to join us live and kind of go over what you sent us as a chart? Because I didn't understand where the source of it was. I know you built it. I can see that, but I didn't see where the source was. And I had to try to understand the squiggly versus the solid line. Where are you, Del? Let's turn that on. There we go. From an earlier part of the show where you worked from Vegas. Okay. Hey, Del.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Hi.
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
There's a
Actually,
mess behind me. We're actually I'm at home and we're moving, so I've got packing supplies all around me as well. It's pretty nutty. Which camera do I have on?
Stuart can empathize with the moving and the packing and the boxing and the The joy of it
Where are
all.
you moving to?
Just local move. It's crazy time to be moving, isn't it? But yes, we're
pain. I just did the same thing. So,
what's that?
I just did the same thing. This is the first time I've done the show in my new house, so we're in the middle of the move too. So
Oh my gosh, yeah. So we're on the other side of that. The intimidation now is how do we get all this stuff? How do we get all this stuff, and then how do we get it out of here? And then it switches to, oh my God, we have to unpack and put all this stuff, find a place for all this stuff. I mean, it's intimidating.
Yeah, it's like a global pandemic wasn't stressful enough.
I go to try and solve the problem of recovery from COVID-19 as a break.
Well, that's a baseline for sure. Boy, oh boy, when it's better for you to do that than it is what you're doing. That's a low baseline.
Sure thing.
So, Adele, a little bit about the share on the chart for us. What was that really representing when you said break even on that?
Yeah, so we have over 5,000 hotels that we do labor management for. That's our technology, labor management, and in order for that to work, our system drives off of operational data. So we get all these hotels' operational data, occupancy, forecasted data, you name it, all the different drivers. We have all of this information. So we track this pretty readily. We don't have the breadth of, say, like STAR. We don't have the number, but we've got a really good sample. And what we looked at was we theoretical break even has always been about 40%. It varies by chain scale, up to 50% for more complicated boxes, but down to about the high 30s for less complicated properties. But 40% for talking purposes is theoretical break even for hotels. Since the start of COVID, we've been tracking the percent of our portfolio that is above 40% occupancy, and that's that chart that I sent is looking at it actually by day. So today, hotels are seeing a mix of profit days and we'll call them transitional days, right? Lost days. And when they can flip a day into a profit day, that makes a huge difference right now. That might be the difference between a cash flow positive month or handing over the keys to the bank, right? And so we've been tracking that pretty carefully across the board. And recently, the trend has been, as you saw in there, it flutters up and down a lot. There's huge volatility, but the average has been tailing off, and that's because of the drop in leisure transient and the lack of growth in corporate transient. Plus, we're coming into shoulder season that was typically buoyed up by group. I mean, there's no group right now. I mean, except for this little spike this past weekend, which was leisure group. There's no group. So it's just tough. That's what I was sharing.
Which was thank you for the explanation, and also thank you for sharing it. So, have you guys worked out a break-even analysis as to how many days above the line or at the line you need to maintain that contrast to below the line, and how far below the line over a period of time? Like saying over a 30-day spread, if I can get 21% above the line or at the line, I can survive baseline costs compared to if I stay lesser than that, I'm actually bleeding money and maybe turning the keys over. Have you guys done sort of trending on that at all?
It's so situational that it's a really hard. It's one of those things where even the 40% is probably not real for any one hotel, right? It's the fallacy of averages. But if I was to speculate like in general what you need more than a third of the days to be positive with the typical hotel gross operating margins to break even for the month or have a shot at breaking even for the month. Anything above that, you're probably at a point where you're cash flow positive. Okay. So most hotels up until the last couple of months were deeply in the red from a cash flow standpoint, except for exterior corridor hotels, which are deemed the safe hotels. I mean, this crisis has saved the exterior hotel category for another 20 years. And extended stay, right, which have actually done really, really well. Everybody else they've been losing money, and of course in city center conference hotels, they're shut, they're closed, right? They're running with a skeleton crew of 4 people just to patrol the halls of the empty box. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So it really varies, but I would say 10 nights a month. If you're making money, if you're above break even for 10 nights, you're probably doing okay right now. Which sounds terrible, but it's true.
It's funny that you bring this up in this way, because I mean, I'm having an active discussion with my clients about break-even analysis for future budgets, where it's not about profitability margins, it's about sustainable margin. And then that's why I'm fascinated with what you're talking about, because literally I was trying to find some benchmark relationship as to percentages above or below cost-effective line. Like, am I making bills this day or am I not making bills this day? And how many days can I live like that versus how many days are above the line that I can make up for the days that I'm not? And that's a really neat. If that could be somehow put into a budget macro, that would be wicked cool.
I'll have to see if we could do that data. We're actually doing a free webinar through AHOA next week on budgeting for labor costs, because I mean, the truth is there all these cycles in interview being spent budgeting for revenues, which is a nightmarish task because nobody knows what's next, right? We don't really know what's coming. But the way that they budget for labor is tragically flawed now. None of the ways they used it in the past, which was percent of revenue or do it like last year, those won't work, and they could really mess up their plans for budget season. So we're focusing on that. But the idea around break even, one of the things we were talking about, everybody knows that zero-based budgeting is a really great idea in theory, but nobody ever did it because it just took time. We actually had 2 months of zero-based operations this year, which can be used as a basis for a real-life zero-based budgeting exercise, and that's going to pay dividends for years. Like if we really tackle what happened and what we really learned about ourselves at zero, because 4% occupancy was not a thing. We didn't think about that. We actually had 4% occupancy in most major markets for the month of April. So we have an opportunity to use that data if we're smart about it.
No, it's interesting you bring that up. By OTA Insights just dropped out an article on the 3 pillars of revenue management future tense, and you are speaking right to one of the cores that they were talking about of current data. People think that current data is irrelevant because it is so skewed artificially that is to be not practical for usage in the future tense. This is just the horror of what can happen, but it shouldn't be used. You should look at what you were looking at historically as in future tense, and then what you're looking at in future tense, and put those together and find some facsimile of current demand. And you're straight up throwing it right in the middle going, no, look at what we learned from what we got in this process and add that to the equation of what is true zero base. What is your basement? What is your absolute bottom floor? And where do you need to build from those? And like I said, with the labor costs and so forth, you're so spot on with the idea. It was like every metric we had in comparison to it is not relevant. It's based on all your zero value propositions. What does it actually cost you to operate? Not what is it in comparison to revenues. It's what is your actual baseline cost for everything. And that even includes your fixed costs, or not fixed costs, I should say, not to use the right term, your now current costs of operation, which is including the cleaning aspect that's been incorporated to it as well. That added value proposition, what is it really core cost of operation, has to be put as a baseline. And that's brilliant. I think that's a phenomenal product.
And you can do it with everything, right? So we also have zero base for productivity, output of a salesperson, right? We got in 2010, when we were recovering from that recession, we discovered that I was running commercial for IHG for the Americas at the time. We discovered that most of our hotel salespeople had never sold in a downturn, and most of them had never made a cold call. Right, it was all inbound, handling RFPs and dealing with renewals of L&R. Well, that's like where we are right now. We kind of blew that opportunity because business recovered and they got complacent again, and we were there again. Right now, we should know exactly how much revenue every single salesperson is bringing in the door, because if it's coming in the door, it's because a salesperson brought it in the door. Right, very different situation than the passive demand we've ridden on for the entire history of the industry. Big opportunity.
Holly.
I was waiting to see where he was going with that. Very well said. I thought
it's not really passive demand because you brought it in because of marketing and reputation.
Well, sort of, but I'll say that this is, and they used to say this to us who funded marketing. In the history of travel marketing, we have only made a handful of people actually take a trip, right? We don't usually say, hey, have you ever been to Detroit? You should go. We say, if you happen to be coming to Detroit, stay here, right? True. So that's what I mean by demand exists and we serve that demand. That's what I mean. And that is not the case today.
Not only.
Sorry, it still is a little bit a case today because the good salespeople are out there finding business that has to travel and are coming to their area and are shifting it to their properties, but they are being proactive. I was on a call yesterday that was driving me a little bit crazy because of what you were saying, Dal. Historically, the business came to salespeople. They didn't have to go out to look for it. Now that it's not happening, everybody's searching for a hunter, the hunter salesperson. And literally, I kept wanting to say, the 80s is calling from their rotary phone asking for their sales term back. We don't want hunters. Like, I'm picturing Gordon Gekko trying to close that sale. Yes, you need to be proactive and go out and find business, but you need to do it in such a different manner. People have to trust you. You've got to know their business. You've got to present a different front than picking up the phone and being a Gordon Gekko hunter. So I'm always a little bit paranoid about, we do in fact have to be proactive. You're 100% correct, but we still need to focus on that concept of relationship building. And
I'm not eschewing that at all. I think that's really important. My point is that we actually now know exactly, there's no debate about the value of one more salesperson. You see it, you know exactly what you should expect, and you can hold people accountable to that and reward them even more appropriately to their performance. That really was less the case. We actually had a great deal of complacency going into the beginning of this year. And now we can't afford even a scrap of complacency about that stuff.
It's absolutely true. It's a really good point. Let's learn from it.
I was hogging all the questions and stuff. I was fanboying the data that you had. Like, ooh, that sounds like fun. By all means, go ahead. I'm writing notes for us so we don't miss the dialogue on this. So please go right ahead and ask whatever questions or comments.
You mentioned that good salespeople are out making sales calls or making relationships and massaging the business, but we still have a huge unemployment rate in the hotel industry. And even though the national unemployment went down, restaurant unemployment went down, but the hotel is still a lot of unemployment, even for those who are opened. Sadly, a lot of sales and marketing people are not there.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, I've been writing a piece for Hotel News Now for the last several months on Fridays, the labor snapshot. We just published it an hour ago. And 51.6% of hotel employees have returned to work, right? That's where we are relative to normal employment pre-COVID. And a lot of those positions, sales and marketing has really not recovered. It's still at about, on average, one person per hotel, maybe two in some cases. Those people are still waiting to be asked back. They need to come. That actually needs to be the next hire if we're going to survive the rest of this cycle.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. And sadly, the ones that are back, if they're on property, they're spending a portion of their time checking guests in and out and doing non-sales-related functions.
I threw that latest.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
This is that's for all hotels, and then I'll throw another one. I don't know if this is useful, but it's the role by department. So what jobs are in place pre and post, and what the trend is. So it could also be interesting.
One thing I know from just, again, having the quarantining conversation with HSMI's BC chapter yesterday, a lot of people, the other shoe fell, where things are improving, hotels are opening. Travelzoo closed their office in Vancouver. Hotels.com closed their office in Vancouver. Expedia has reduced down to a quarter their lease for the space in Vancouver. So we're still seeing the ripple of the secondary market effect, I guess, the service market to it as well, where they're transitioning. They've let people go in combinations with that. People were furloughed, and very few people were kept, and those people kept were at home, staying at home. So we're still seeing the impact on the non-direct hotel employees as well. For those who are serving, they just don't have the need to be in the infrastructure for them at that point. They're not being told when and if what's going to happen in the future tense for them. They're not being given we're doing do this for 90 days or 60 days or 30 days. They're just like, you're furloughed. We'll let you know if that changes. And that's in markets that have things going on, Vancouver and so forth. That Stuart, I was mentioning to Melissa when you popped out for a second. I think I shared that data that Amadeus shared with us on that conversation. it is still fascinating to me that 14% of all airlift going to Vancouver's airport is from the U.S. Just it's one of those things like seriously, because they're essential and or they've been sponsored in or whatever, but they have this back and forth that they're still there.
Don't they have the 2-week quarantine thing?
They do, and that's actually been a resource for the client I have in Vancouver. Is that because of us being all suites and having a small footprint in isolation, and they take this stuff very seriously. Like the hotel has an obligation to log when they allow the person out of the room to go smoke or come down, pick up their breakfast or stand outside, or they actually log it. So they're the verifier that the person did the quarantine because they do key lock checks and everything else. So they keep track of and share that to the government to prove that the person went through the quarantine cycle.
So do you know the fine if you don't quarantine in Canada?
Oh, not off the top of my head because it's been it's all about, but it's not cheap.
How about 650,000?
Whoa! Okay, I'm staying in the room if I go.
I have a friend who's a banker in Toronto, and he's from the States, and he's going home, and I said, he has to quarantine when he's going home to the States, and when he goes back, he said, I have to quarantine, and I said, but not really, and he said, oh no, we take it seriously here.
Wow. Yeah, well, we're getting a lot of market from the mid-Canadian market, the Toronto, the Montreals that want to go to Vancouver because they're at a lesser restriction than Toronto and Montreal right now. They have the ability to go to Vancouver, and they're in level 4 lockdown compared to level, I think, 2 in Toronto and 3 in Montreal or so. They're not close, in that sense. But, yeah.
Wow. So
Del,
can I ask Del, why did you all move during COVID?
We listed our house for sale before COVID, and then somebody bought it. So there you go.
Stuart moved because he found a spooky room in his house he didn't know about for years.
No, I found the spooky room after I'd put it on the market, as was a couple of factors, but the primary one is my in-laws are moving in with us. They're having some health issues, so we bought a house that was a little more conducive to housing them and us at the same time. Because
I don't think you should call your in-laws' room the spooky room. That doesn't seem
Now, what Lauren is referring to is my house that I'm selling is a 3-bedroom. His was a 3-bedroom house that I've lived in for over 5 years. And
5 years. 5 years.
And our market is really hot. Real estate is hotter now than it has been in 30 years. Like it is booming because everyone's moving from the north down south. And so you can't keep a house will go on the market and sell within a day or two. And ours was on the market for a couple of weeks and it hadn't sold. And we were like, well, what's going on? And we got feedback and everyone was like, we want 4 bedrooms. There's enough 4-bedroom inventory. And we like your house, but we need a 4th bedroom. The one person came by and said, I really like your house, but I wish there was a 4th bedroom, but I'd consider it if I could put another bathroom upstairs. What's behind this wall right here? They asked us because they saw a hatch. There's like a little access panel hatch that had been
5 years he lived in this house. Just a reminder, 5 years.
Still painted. And it's like, I've never looked behind the hatch. I don't know what's behind that hatch. And I've never really paid attention to the line of the roof or anything from the outside. So I was like, I'll open the hatch. I'll break the seal. So I did that and I walked in there. And I walked in there and I kept walking. There's like 600 feet of unfinished attic on the same level.
5 years in the house. What's behind the hatch? I don't know.
So we put down a subfloor and insulated the walls in there. And I didn't even finish the room and I had 2 offers within 2 days. So,
wow.
Look behind your hatch.
So did you end up selling to the family that needed the chainsaw museum or the one they called his wife mistress? I mean, just I didn't.
Yeah, that's the dungeon.
There weren't any bodies in there or anything like that, right?
So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's crazy, Stuart.
5 years he's in this house. And nobody's behind that wall.
No bodies, no ghosts. You're good.
And I perfectly understand how stupid that makes me look. That story, but it's sold my house, so I don't care.
No. You are a very focused, family-focused individual that walked up the stairs and by the wall to take care of your kids and family and never once considered, gee, the house has a big old roof that way. And
and Adele, it occurred to me you moved also.
Pardon me?
Adele is also here.
Yes, yes. Well, thanks to COVID, I started going to Plan B, after 20 years of working at the library hotel collection, and I wasn't able to work remotely, and I wanted to be closer to my parents who are in their mid-high 80s, and so I just did something that I actually wanted to do anyway. And it's so much harder to make a decision that you want to make when you have to let go of something. But now I didn't have anything to let go of. So it was easy to be brave.
So, Lauren, did you move too?
Not me. No.
Oh, I thought you said you were packing as well.
No. That was Stewie. I mean, I'm trying to get rid of stuff because we have the office a few blocks away from the condo. We had already downsized, so I already went through the 15 garage sales from hell program to get rid of and purge stuff, and I still had stuff I couldn't get rid of or sell, and I didn't want to sell because I thought it was valuable, even though nobody else did and wouldn't give me money for it.
Star Trek and Star Wars memorabilia.
And plus a tremendous amount of seasonal technology. I could literally physically show the timeline of technology creation for all the crap I bought every year of the same stuff that get updated.
Have a Lawrence Museum of antiquated technology.
I'm thinking, you know what? I could have that, the whole thing on the wall. Like, this is the history of the iPhone, and this is
That'd be cool.
yeah. And the watch and the AirPods. Yeah. So I have a bunch of So we have the office space over. No, I haven't really been moving. We've just been kind of going back and forth, which is what led us a couple of weeks ago to take the little few days away and go up drive market wise and just get out of town for a little bit. Just change the venue. We want to be on the beach and look out and not deal with a lot of people and have a kitchen we can cook in and wiggle our toes in the sand. And it was, that was the purpose of the travel for it. So Del, what's on the program after you move? I mean, settling in? Are you going to have to start traveling again, or what are you going to be able to stay where you're at? What's going on?
Yes, well, our trips were largely a lot of conferences. We do see some of our larger customers periodically, but conferences were a big thing, and of course, there's none. The last of this fall season conferences finally got postponed or canceled. So we're expecting more of the same for the moment, which is fine because we don't have to be face to face to do what we do, and our service is a SaaS product, so we can deliver it. We do deliver it remotely, so it's fine.
Hey, Dale, are you guys going to participate in virtual high tech?
Yes, I actually am speaking on Tuesday morning, talking about labor costs as a great investment, something like that. So, yeah. Are you?
Yeah, I think we are. We had a conversation with them today just about. I wanted to visualize what the virtual booths look like and things like that, but I think we're going to do it. I mean, I think it's a big sponsor.
Yeah, we've been debating about that just because those are hard to execute for vendors. It's just it's hard. We haven't done it yet, and I don't know. I'm waiting for someone to tell me how great it was.
We're gonna speak at. I'm not sure what the time slot is yet, but we're doing some kind of speaking role as well. But yeah, it's the one expo that I really feel like we've gotten a lot of value from consistently over the years. So I want to support it, right? I want to make sure it comes out healthy on the other side of this.
Hated to miss it. It's that was good. I'm really bummed about lodging being canceled. That's a really good event. I don't know. And plus I just like seeing everybody. We're a people-driven business. Everybody in this business likes people. And here we are, Zooming all day instead of actually interacting.
I haven't had a Lauren hug in months, and it's killing me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, Holly's the hugger. Although I will still hug her, and she hates it, but I give her a hug anyway. Holly, with that in mind, you last show or the show before, I think piped in about how terrible a certain conference was, online conference. Was it you that popped in and how bad a certain online conference was, or no? I think I seem to remember you popping in. Somebody's like, "Oh, the IAC or something. That was a horrible online summit. There's going to be lots of refunds." Maybe that was.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
Maybe that was Tammy. I'm sorry. Maybe it was Tammy dropped in. I thought it was you or Tammy that dropped in that there was some total cluster of an online summit that was the worst of the worst or bad or whatever. And you're right, Adele, it's like you want somebody to say that wasn't bad or that was okay or for now that'll have to do. And I hear from people that bash them like this was poorly handled, bandwidth was an issue, you couldn't really talk to anybody, what they said you could do you couldn't do. Have
you seen the Remo platform? Have you attended any conferences with the Remo platform? I'm going to one in the next couple weeks. I am in love with this platform. I think it might be a solution to a lot of the issues that have been taking place, but we'll see. I'll let you know.
One thing I noticed with the Microsoft Teams that they just added as a feature to the Teams display, which I thought was brilliant, is that instead of having the tiles like even we have on this platform, it put everybody in a theater seat, like you're talking to an audience and everybody has a like they're sitting in a chair in a theater, and you can talk to them in one unit. I thought it was just a neat visual variation to the tiles, kind of thing.
Gimmick at all, Lauren, not a gimmick at all.
Well, that's part of it, though. That's what I like about what I've seen of Remo, because it looks like you're going into a convention center. There's floors that you go to, and then you go into an auditorium, and there's tables, and you can go and sit at a table, and you can chat with video chat just with the people at that table. And then when you're bored with them, you can yourself move to another table. And
that's really interesting. But at the end of the day, a conference is good if the moderation is really good, if the speakers are really good, and it can be a lousy forum. And I've seen, we've probably all done a bunch of these, attended or participated in a bunch of virtual conferences. I've seen some really great presentations, and I've seen a lot of really terrible ones. And I think they would have been great or terrible had we been there in person too.
Yeah. Some things never change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, our panel would have been awesome at AHOA if we had been able to pull that off. That was going to be.
Yeah. I mean, we had a rocking agenda. I thought it was going to be a really interesting dialogue. We should just you know what? We should just bring that back alive and throw it up there anyway.
Seriously, it would be really good.
Yeah, because if we really was one of you know what? We're going to do that. We're going to go over and get the band back together and throw it up there. Now, I was a little surprised Kat was going to join us today because I think she's already from this, but she has stepped away from AHOA as director of education. So I want her to share her new venture to it. But Steve, who is who is a right hand into it, very talented, very capable person. This is a huge opportunity for Kat to step into. So I'm really happy she's doing it. Sad that she's leaving AHOA because of all the influence she had on that in a positive way. But Steve is more than up to the challenge for it, stepping in if that's what they're going to be doing. But that was a really good, really strong concept. I think we're going to get the band back together and we're going to do it as a presentation. We'll do it ourselves.
Try it on Remo.
Well, let's see.
I would like to see.
Well, is Remo on
I would like to see somebody.
I just put the
AppSumo?
link.
No, it's not an AppSumo yet, but I'm going to tell them they should be.
I wish they would be.
Right?
I would love to see
by the
somebody
way,
do
Holly, I pointed Dean towards AppSumo with the practication that don't be mad at me when you start wanting stuff.
Dean, you're going to notice all of a sudden you don't have quite enough money left at the end of the month to pay your mortgage. It's because it's gone to AppSumo.
Yeah, well, see, no, I'm already in that situation, so I figure it's okay. There's no risk.
Del, have you gone to AppSumo? Stay away.
Yeah, no, AppSumo is you feel like there should be a rehab for it. Hi, my name is Lauren. Hi, Lauren. I haven't bought an app in 24 hours.
It's absolutely true. When I see that email come up, this is going away, I'm like, oh no.
Gotta go look.
So Del, this is sort of cool. I have a guest staying with me who's a 22-year-old kid who is working for Amazon here in Tempe, Arizona. And his job is doing what you do, kind of, for the labor for all of the Amazon plants everywhere. He's part of the team that does the labor logistics. How many more people do they need? How many more hours? It is fascinating. He's been sharing with me every day how the inner workings of Amazon take place. It's incredible.
Yeah, the root of our business comes from the founder's experience managing massive call centers around the world and doing predictive modeling for staffing, and because there it was all about maintaining their occupancy is the percent of time a person's on the phone, right? The reps are actually talking versus not talking, and yes. Managing high occupancy and low hold time. Those two things are really hard to balance. And so we built that kind of predictive modeling for staffing and brought it to hotels because most hotels schedule like last week, right? They take last week's schedule and that's what they use. And last week's schedule is based on some time in distant past where we didn't have enough housekeepers on staff. And somebody overreacted and it became the future schedule. And that's just crazy. And so, for forever, hotels have been wasting tons and tons and tons of money because they don't use data-driven staffing models. And that was okay because you still made a lot of money. But now they can't afford it, right? They're like, they can't afford to have, 4 hours of extra housekeeping yesterday. They can't do it. It'll kill them. So all of a sudden, we're like pretty popular.
I bet you are.
Yeah.
So to bring up a touch of, first off, Adele, you dropped us a webinar from AHOA. Are you on that one?
I'm moderating a panel on Monday and on Wednesday at 3:00.
Okay. All right. I signed up already while you gave me that, because when you popped it on, I'm like, cool, what is it? And then you pop the link. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'll put that in the show notes as well for people who want to sign up for that, for both of those on AHOA. In contrast, let me point out, and I want to say this on behalf of what people need to figure out how to get correct, is HSMAI, I feel, kind of fell on itself this past week. They had this LinkedIn masterclass thing that popped up, signed up for it. They were going to charge for it. If you remember, you didn't charge for it. The foundation was supposed to cover that quote cost to it. They brought an outside third party that I don't think really understood what they were presenting, or to whom they were presenting, I should say. And the scary part of it was the logistics were all falling apart. You signed up, you got the receipt, but there was no link to go in. You couldn't go in.
I could not get in.
When you wanted to add it to your calendar, all you could do was add to Outlook. And I don't use Outlook, so I had to manually go in and put it in, which most of the time, because I try to sign up for a lot of stuff knowing I can get replays if I can't make it or whatever, I'm okay with. But this one, couldn't even do it. I had to call up Holly and go, Holly! And I thought she was actually teaching it because she teaches LinkedIn. And it was like, no. Wow! So, and she's like, I'll send you the link. I get on the link, and master's class in LinkedIn was, welcome to LinkedIn. This is how you create an account. This is where you log into the account. And I'm like, wow, this is not master's class. This is welcome to LinkedIn. So I was a little dismayed by the fact that, sometimes things go tone deaf. That, you're doing these summits. We're talking about summits and the quality of summits and the quality of doing things virtually because we don't have that ability for first-person contact. You got to work out the details on that stuff, so that they flow correctly.
Kind of important. I'm not going to comment on that because you and I had quite a robust conversation privately about that. However, I do want to point out the Arizona chapter of HSMAI is actually doing what I think is a really cool thing. I'm putting a link for you guys to register. We're having a meeting on, I think it's October 15th, for how to have a hybrid meeting, which I think is what's going to happen for the next couple of years in hospitality. So we have 30 people who can register to go on-site live to this meeting, and then everybody else can register and attend virtually. And the whole meeting is about how you do these meetings, how you make it engaging, both for people in front of you in real life, and then for those who are dialing in. We've been doing a ton of planning. We have a couple of really interesting speakers who are going to be talking about some tips and tricks and audiovisual kind of stuff. But I'm really very excited about it. I'm going to actually go to the meeting in person, but we have all sorts of cool things planned. So if you can join us virtually.
That's a great topic.
I know, right? How to have a hybrid meeting via a hybrid meeting. I mean, you have to think about Like, so the people that are there, and this is my idea, and I'd love your input because nobody likes my idea. So you know, in these socially distanced now meeting rooms, right? You have 2 people at these big tables or 3 people at these big tables and all these empty spaces and seats. I said, put some chairs, put some sticks with pictures of faces on the sticks of people who are virtually attending. So you can kind of, you know, have them send in a picture of themselves and we'll put them at the table with us. Like, wouldn't that be fun? And they were like, no, that's creepy.
No, I love it.
Right? I thought it was a good
I
idea.
mean, just put pictures of Lauren everywhere. Just have 1,000 Laurens.
Oh, that's not going to keep people sitting at the table. They're going to be like, gotta go.
If you're the speaker, it's really nice sometimes to look out into an audience and see the faces of who's attending. I think it's a good idea.
Hey, a couple of things. First off, Del, I want to make sure I have permission. Can I share the image links that you shared with us earlier on?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome. I'll make sure they are in the show notes for people to pull down on those. If for those who are live or those on the other shared channels aren't getting these links, they see them on the screen, but they can't click on them, obviously.
I wanted to say what they were. I shared the staffing by department and the wage rates. This was a big thing we just released about 10 days ago. Wage rate analysis pre-COVID and then today, which was really surprising because average wages in hotels are actually higher. But that has a lot more to do with tenure than it does to wage rates. But the starting wages, which I need to put in there, the starting wages for new people has not moved since pre-COVID, which is really interesting. And we have some theories around that. But any hope that hotels had that they would be able to, you know, save some money by being able to pay less because of all the people on the bench waiting for jobs, so far, not so much. You know, they got to pay what they got to pay. There's no relief there. They got to find relief somewhere else.
So quick opinion from your perspective on this. Is that a poor management decision, or is that just a reality of the fact that they're dealing with limited funding, so they can only offer what they can offer for people to roll in when they need the position filled?
The wages that actually the reasons that they're paying the same for new people that they were paying in February is because they don't know what to pay them. That's the number one reason. Second is they were probably underpaying them before relative to other non-hospitality jobs that these people were considering. And we're actually at a level where they probably are about right today versus where they should have been in February. Because we had 1 million unfilled jobs in February before the bottom fell out. And there's a reason for that. They're hard jobs, they're burnout jobs, and we weren't paying very much. So now we're still not paying very much, but now there's a whole lot of people looking for work. So that's the reason why. But the average pay of people staying, we kept the best people and the most tenured people, and we brought back the most tenured and best people first, and that's why the average pay right now is so much higher than it was pre-COVID.
Yeah. Do you feel that the reason why we're able to have the lower pay per job type compared to what can be compared against is because the job frequency opportunity was higher at that time, so that people could easily get a job with us in hospitality, even if it's at the lower rate, under the auspices that at least it's something now while I'm still trying to find something better. And now that the opportunity's gone and then we're not picking up that from that,
Again, there's a lot to unpack in the wage stuff, but wage sophistication in our industry is fairly lacking. We actually offer a wage benchmarking service that is actually legal and it's almost free. It's like a really, really cheap thing, but it's because we learned that most hotels are calling around to other hotels to find out what they're paying housekeepers and front desk managers and things like that, which is totally it's a felony. It's a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. They do it every day, and we're like, guys, just for our own customers, stop it. We'll give you the data. Just don't go to jail because you want to figure out what to pay a housekeeper.
That's crazy.
The data. So
that's like calling them and saying, "What rate do you charge?" Oh, okay, yeah, we'll match that.
That's exactly the same. It's illegal.
I did not know that. Seriously?
Yeah, it is illegal.
You can't discuss salaries. No, you can't. No.
And the whole voting twice thing also.
No, that's
not in Florida where they're being told to do that. Just so you know, the Carolinas, whatever that was. Yeah. Hey, also shout out to Alan. Thank you. That is a wicked data source. I mean, that's crazy cool. The 2020 travel trends of reporting knowledge. Thank you, Alan, for that. If you're okay with it, I'd like to throw that into the show notes as well, if I have the permission from you to do so. I think that's some pretty cool data from the process. Wow, we got a few minutes left for this. I know that Robert was kind enough to share a list, which we did not get to, which is, Robert, we do appreciate it always, and it's always in the show notes, so please know that. And if you want to sign up for Robert Cole's list that he does curate every week, you can go to bit.ly/rock cheetah, all lowercase, no space, and then you can sign up for it. It really is an excellent list. We use it as much as often as we can when we have the opportunity to, unless we have the amazing Miss Melissa with us. And of course, Dell, you definitely put us on a different rail and when you jumped in, so thank you for that as well. We didn't have to go over and tag into some of the content for it, but there is some really cool articles that he shares with this. I will be highlighting one of them, of course, in the podcast I'll be doing shortly after this as a recap. So with that in mind, and running towards the end, is there anything in particular that anybody came that had a burning yearning to make sure we did bring up before we start saying our goodbyes? No? Winning lotto numbers? No?
I came for Fuel Travel's research.
Yes. Oh, as a reminder to everyone, yes, you can go to fueltravel.com/blog and get this information along with the ability to look at all previous 8 of these surveys. It is a massive undertaking. Melissa, can't thank you enough. Literally, I use this as a benchmark when I discuss things all the time. And you just gave me some great stats today, especially about the local information stuff. Oh, heck, I'm putting that in front of people. That 70-30 ratio. Oh, dang, yeah. This is like, because you do it. Now, what was the sample size this time? Has it been keeping kind of close to what you've had before? Or is it still on the lower side?
We split the database a lot, and it's the participation levels have dropped tremendously. If you think back to the beginning, we were getting over 10,000 at a time. Now we're kind of trying to keep it between 1,000 and 2,000, just so it's statistically valid, but we're not killing the database at the same time. So
it's still statistically valid by far. And I think given ups and downs and hot spots and things like this, you're always going to have somebody that wants to speak their mind when asked about it. So I think you're always going to have relevancy to this. And to your point, you wish you had data before the whole COVID. Well, certainly through this process, this is such a benchmarking coming out of it. I mean, as time goes on. So
there's so many lessons to be learned from it, and just the trends and the behavior and the what contributed to that. I mean, what the next phase for us is really, and I think this will be something we'll do throughout 2021, is just really taking an analysis of the journey we all took together, the consumer psychological changes, their perception changes, their behavioral changes over the course of this whole thing. I think it'll be a good retrospective. So whereas we've been doing these one-off snapshots of where we are this week, with the next phase is to really start looking at where did we go, what was the journey like. And so it's going to be a lot of work, but I think it's important work that will help a lot of people as they recover.
No, most certainly for that. Because from the data perspective, we all say, it always is funny because we make jokes about our own industry. It's like, those that came out of 19 years ago saying, I will never, ever go back to OTAs again the way I did then. And as sure as 2008 popped in, everybody got spoofed back to, oh, hey, OTA, please sell my hotel rooms. So you don't know how you react until you have to react. And this is a wonderful, not just snapshot, but dialogue through the entire process of how did we as a culture react to our perception of travel during the process of the uncertainties and the lack of knowledge, and then knowledge and whatever recoveries that come out of it. You guys are going to have a wonderful reference point for that, for going through this process. So thank you for all that.
Dean, can I ask, since I am newly educated in the world of Meta, what's going on with Meta today?
What's going on in Meta today? Where shall we begin? We've got 5 minutes left of the show to go. I don't know if we can cover all that, but I tell you a couple of things that I would bring up. Right now, you're seeing situations where Google in particular is offering models that are pay-per stay and pay-per booking, so they are no risk model for hoteliers to use. You don't have to have a marketing budget up front to do it with. So that's one big thing. And the other big thing being destinations. There's a lot of talk out there, and we had this conversation last week as well, about channel shift as opposed to incremental revenue when it comes to metasearch. And there's kind of, I like to call it a myth that metasearch is only about channel shift. Well, I liken it more to the use of your branded versus non-branded search terms. Because yes, if somebody's looking for your property directly, that's kind of like a branded search term. Now, shifting the channel of where is it getting booked at. But if they're looking for hotels in New York City, for example, that's a non-branded search term. Well, there's things that you can do on Google within the meta search landscape that improve your ranking order on those search results. There's various kinds of destination ads across all of the meta channels that can do that, and that drives incremental revenue. So much longer conversations I could go into on that. Too long to probably fit into the last few minutes here.
Well, we'll drag it up next week by far because it is relevant. I can tell you right now from even my client base, brand, generic vanilla box on the side of the road, people, they're getting 19-1 on average on their ROI for Meta.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a great.
They're cheap right now too. So
yeah. I mean, I'm also competing on keywords against OTAs that are stepping into markets because of seasonality, business demand. I mean, some markets coming back to live because of demand, leaf peepers and so forth. And so those markets all of a sudden seeing massive OTA influx on bidding on keywords. And I've had to step back from some high-end keywords that I had fun being able to be in because they flat up went from $1.28 a click to $12 a click and go, too rich for my blood. Take that list off the list, So yeah, you have that, but right. Meta is not as that right now. They're not really jiving into that as much as, and so we're still able to margin ourselves off of the Meta. So great question, Holly, with Dean. And yes, by far we have to bring that back up because we had a really great, fun conversation last week when Stephanie, who popped up an article about her opinion about it, not totally, right or wrong, just it was a great opinion article, and then Dean and her going back and forth as to the pros and cons of the perception. So it was really cool.
Yeah, and Stephanie had a really good point about the fact that she was working with branded hotels too, and that does change the landscape, does change the viewpoint a little bit because you have to remember that your brand is already doing Meta. So anything that you're doing at a property level now is a top off to that. And so you have to start thinking about what's called the law of diminishing returns. If you were already getting to the second position and now you're just topping it off to get to the first position, your gap in there isn't that big anymore. But if you were below the fold before and now you're topping it off to get up there, yeah, that's a huge improvement, right? So everything is relative.
Very true. Del, I hope this is not the last time you join us by any stretch. We'd love to have you come in whenever you get the chance, especially when there's less boxes around you. I mean, not digging on your backdrop there, but, spruce it up a little bit. No, just kidding.
Yeah, thanks for letting me horn in. You guys are great. I tune in whenever I can because I always enjoy hearing you guys and your perspective, and keeps me close back to my. I spent most of my career on the heads and beds side of the business. It's still kind of where my heart is, and just dip my toe in the ops side, where it's been great, and I've never had a bigger impact. Weirdly enough, because people neglect labor, but one day I'll be back, and where I belong, filling hotel rooms.
There you go. Well, appreciate it. I think the same malady has hit Robert, who used to be with us for many years, and he just got totally sucked into data. Focusrite, JD Powers, he's just turned into this machine for data for them. So he just has his time constraint and priorities have shifted because of the demand in the market. So I definitely see the same with you. It's like, yeah, this is where everybody wants to know the information is coming from. So thank you for generating great insights with it. And I think we should actually take some time in the future tense, that whenever you have the time, join us and let's just focus in on the dialogue about that again.
I'd love to talk about, I tell you that I posted it, but this idea about reversing the revenue management thing, I wrote an article about 5 years ago, which was one of the most popular ones I ever wrote. And it was the most loved and the most hated because I talked about how revenue management was completely backwards and we needed to rethink it. And I actually think it's worth revisiting because of that whole base business thing. Like there's no base business anymore. So the revenue management model built on this concept of base business drives compression, which drives rate. It doesn't work. It's not going to work. We need to rethink it. And I think there's an opportunity. So maybe talk about that one day.
I will be more than happy to be the catalyst that says, ha, I was right 5 years ago. Del, if people want to find you and know what it is that you do and what it is that you produce and where you're at for it, where can they find you? How do they contact you? If you want them to contact you, I should say. And what website and so forth and services are you doing?
So hoteleffectiveness.com, nice long name that, I didn't come up with the name of the company, but it kind of works. So hoteleffectiveness.com is our company. And then I can be found on LinkedIn pretty easily. And I'm always responsive to industry people who reach out.
Awesome.
Not necessarily the everybody else who reaches out, but to industry people.
Yes, I try to filter my LinkedIn as well. It's like, no, I either have to know you or you're in the industry. Period. That's my
That's right.
my LinkedIn fence there. Sorry. Adele, for those who want to know more about Aspire Reputation Management and what it is you're doing and how to contact you, how can they find you?
I have spent the last 20 years making my boutique hotel collection, the library hotel collection, the number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 rated hotels in New York City, and the ARIA number 1 hotel in the world on the TripAdvisor Traveler's Choice Award out of 1.1 million accommodations. That's where I come from. And now that I have left them and opened Aspire Reputation, I'm here to help all the other hoteliers. If you aspire to have a deluge of 5-star reviews, I would love to help you with that. Link in with me. And even if you don't want to sign up with me, but link in with me, get a free consultation. I'll be so happy to chat with you.
Believe me, it wasn't the hotel that made it. It was what was done in the hotel, and Adele did it.
You know what? But the real magic is that I didn't deliver the service. I just facilitated, and the people did it. And that's far more magical. I just, it makes me so proud to see
Stuart,
what they've accomplished.
Stu, you should relate to this. Wasn't there some dude on your island that whistled and all the rats followed him or something? Is that you're from that?
I've so missed Lauren's tangents.
Well, Stuart is from Ireland or something, I thought, but I don't know. Holly, since it's so cool to have you on the show as well, where, when, what, how did they
I'm so glad you went to me next, because as soon as I get off of here, I'm going to promote the podcast that I did with Adele, so you can hear Adele's strategies and approaches. I was so excited to have her on my hospitality sales podcast. Thank you, Lauren. And then the second thing that I'm going to do is finish Dean's class so that we can get that launched. I do training. Scout Simply is the name of my company. I help hotels find more revenue through training, mostly getting people to adapt and learn new technology. You can reach me at holly@scoutsimply.com, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. No, not Facebook. Twitter, pretty much anywhere.
Follow her on Facebook. It's amazing.
No, be quiet.
It's amazing.
Be quiet. I'm a little bit.
You can learn all about politics. The real news. Don't follow fake news. Follow Holly. It's the real news.
Follow Holly. Follow Holly.
I think politicians really need to learn from the hotel business, though. How many of you are getting 1,000 donation requests? So, give me money, give me money, give me money, without any relationship building. So they really need to take a lesson from hotel marketers.
By putting somebody's name on it. Hi, this is Mary. You should donate. Mr. Dean Schmit, with all the world of metasearch and the two tools that, well, not tools per se, but two platforms that you're approaching it, where and how and what?
Hey, actually, a fantastic segue from what Holly was just talking about. We've been working on some training material as part of Basecamp Meta because we want to supply that to the industry. You know, there's a lot of people in the industry that are cross-training now. They're trying to fill up roles that they weren't in before and learning and doing things with metasearch. So a lot of digital agencies that are being tasked with running metasearch campaigns right now have never had to do that before. And so we're developing content to help you understand what it's all about, what to do with it. The free webinar that I've actually done with Epic Revenue Consultants has just finished post-productions. I just got the final copies actually about 30 minutes before our show started today. So watch for more information on that. And then working together with Holly to put together some more advanced training programs that dive deeper into things like connectivity, things like a deep dive into Google and the leverage you can pull in there and so on. The other thing I'm working on with metasearchmarketing.com actually is, I've been working with hotels for a long time and helping them optimize their meta. And one of the challenges has always been how to help that small independent hotel. And so I've been doing a lot of work, a lot of research, talking with a lot of technology companies on how we can facilitate that. Happy to say we put together a program that can do exactly that. So if you're a small little bed and breakfast wanting to make your Google My Business page work for you, I can help you do that.
And Melissa, you are really the heart, the brain, the soul of Fuel Travel. Stuart's the eye candy, associated credit taker, whatever. Yeah, just,
I don't know. He still says I'm dead inside, so I don't think that I have a heart or a soul.
Well, I'm glad that Stuart finally gave you that huge bonus that you've long deserved all this time, so you could have a decent vacation. Just saying. If he hasn't, he should. Just But Melissa, for those to get more information, both not only about yourself and of course your amazing award-winning podcast that we know you come up with all the creative genius on, and also the what Fuel Travel May does and so forth, where is it they can find you and all that information?
You can find all things about Fuel at fueltravel.com. You can find all of the surveys at fueltravel.com/blog or /podcast to listen to our award-winning podcast or get more information about our wonderful app. And you can find me on LinkedIn.
So, Stuart, other than drinking and making new rooms in houses that you didn't know had rooms in them,
and eye candy, which I'd not heard.
Oh, Stuart's eye candy! Come on, I mean, look at that face.
Art and I have a special connection. What can I say?
He's a sexy beast.
Where I've spent a lot of my time recently is, like Melissa said, on the app. Fuel's been around a long time and has a lot of great software that helps drive direct bookings. Our booking engine, our CRM, but the app is really what's been driving us recently. It's helping folks that are trying to reopen in a safe, responsible way. So mobile check-in, keyless entry, that kind of stuff. We just rolled out a feature which is really cool. I need to show it to you, Lauren, but it does real-time ID verification. So you can take a photo of your driver's license or your passport and then do a real-time selfie of yourself, and it uses machine learning to match the two images and verify that it's the right person. And
that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty sick. So yeah, that's taking up a lot of our time and we're getting a lot of good traction. I'm presenting a lot on why you need mobile technology and how it can help mitigate the fear that Melissa talked about earlier on. So all that's available, fueltravel.com. Or if you're interested in learning more, info@fueltravel.com is the email address.
And although I pick on you, it's fun to be able to do that because we're good friends. But I also have to give you a compliment. I remember not too many months ago when you were talking about how sustainable you were going to be able to have Fuel Travel going through this, because as business dropped and fell and disappeared, and you made the very high ground choice of saying we're going to keep everybody as long as we have money in the bank. Mm-hmm. And
we borrowed it to keep people, but
and then to go over and all of a sudden turn into the golden boy of, wait a minute, you have an app that does keyless entry, and now you are like everybody's your favorite best friend, and people walking through the door. Come on, I mean, we saw so many companies do the wrong thing back then, bulk firings on muted Zooms and everything else, and you went over and made the choice of saying, no, we're going to do what it takes to keep the team. So kudos to you.
I can't take credit for that. That was a team effort. We I think the lesson we've learned more than anything else during this is there's so much uncertainty. There's so much out of your control, but there are certain things you can control. So you need to be certain that you're controlling the things you can. And so we very early on, back in mid-March, we created this monster spreadsheet, and we could run real-time permutations on our cash flow, our cash position, our employees, like everything we knew, our AP, our AR, everything. So we were real time in a war room, just tweaking day by day, seeing, how do we keep people? Because our fueligans are what makes the company, right? Our products are great, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of people selling booking engines. What separates ours is the people behind it, the strategies that they create, the service that they offer. So we knew that we were going to take a hit for 2 or 3 months, severe hit, 70% plus drop in revenue for 3 months. And it really hurt, but we knew that it was going to hurt more if we split up the family on the other side of that. So we worked hard to make sure we kept the family together, and it's paid off because we wouldn't be able to service our clients now that they need us if we had let a bunch of people go like a lot of people did. So. Yep.
Well, Del, other than the fact you can hide behind the fact you didn't pick your long URL of hoteleffectiveness.com, I did pick hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com.
And you want to change it to something longer.
Yeah, so so I can't hide behind the fact, I don't know who picked that dang name. I did. But if you would like to get this episode and all previous 265 episodes prior to that, you can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. look for show number 265. We will be rebroadcasting this as a live stream push, which I think you all may have noticed from time to time on LinkedIn and so forth, where we take the show and rebroadcast it at different time zones to help APAC, which we do 11:30 Sydney time on Wednesday and at 11:30 a.m. London time, and for the EU. And then we have another time that we also pick that's more comfortable for Pacific time, because we know that we're pretty early for Hawaii, and then we'll go move to Pacific time. Then we have California that's 3 hours ahead of us. So it's still early morning for some people. So we try to roll out a third push for that as well. We do have a podcast, albeit not award-winning like Fuel Travel, but we do have a podcast called Hospitality Marketing. But we are getting a decent-sized audience. We're getting a much larger audience. And then, of course, there's a reminder, Holly has her Hospitality Sales podcast, which is also very cool. And then even though Lily's not here, we also have a Hospitality Revenue Management podcast. I say we being collectively us as the speakers, not me, we being Hospitality and Digital Marketing. So with that in mind, thank you, everyone, for your time and for joining and for going through the review. Melissa, as always, thank you for all the information. Del, thank you for providing, and Alan in the chat, thank you for throwing over that information as well, and everybody else that was on the other channels listening to us. We'll be back next week. I believe we have Amy from GetGo joining us next week as guest co-host. I haven't confirmed that with Lily yet, since Lily's the one that's bringing her to us. But I believe we have Amy from GetGo joining us, so that should be a fun conversation as well. Holly, I'd love it if you can come back in, because, hey, it's kind of been,
I know.
Anyways, thank you, everyone, for your time today. We look forward to seeing everyone for show number 267 next week, 11:30 Eastern, next Friday. Until then, bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Go travel. Go travel.
Bye.
Go travel. Bye.